Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the warm hush of the desert. No cars, no screens, no hum of electricity, just the rhythmic breathing of the Nile and the soft whisper of sand outside a mud brick wall. You're in ancient Egypt now, around 3,000 years ago, where the line between life and myth blurs like heat rising off stone. You can almost smell the dust baked into every surface and feel the dry air cling to your skin. You probably won't survive this, by the way, not the heat, not the mosquitoes, and definitely not the way people here casually sleep beside open oil lamps. But don't worry, you're just visiting. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The day in Egypt fades fast. The sun, which just hours ago felt like a personal attack, sinks into the western horizon, the direction of the dead, according to Egyptian belief. The air cools, but only a little. You can still feel the stones holding onto the day's heat, radiating it like invisible coals. You walk along a narrow alley between houses made of mud brick, their walls painted in faded lime wash to reflect sunlight. The roofs are flat, built from palm trunks and reeds plastered with clay. Sometimes, families climb up to the roof to sleep under the stars, wrapped in thin linen sheets that catch the night breeze like sails. Inside the house, light comes from a flickering oil lamp. Its flame dances in a shallow dish of fat or castor oil. You step into a room that smells faintly of earth, smoke, and palm fiber. The floor is tamped dirt, swept smooth. The walls absorb the last gold of the evening. It spars no clutter, no furniture for show, just a low bed frame, a chest for clothes, a woven mat. Egyptians weren't minimalists by fashion, they were practical. Everything had to survive the heat, the sand, and the insects. You hear laughter through a thin wall. A family next door is finishing their evening meal. Barley bread, lentils, maybe a little dried fish if they were lucky. The air carries a hint of roasted onion and garlic. You can picture them washing their hands with water poured from a small clay jug, the droplets hitting the dirt floor and disappearing instantly. Now the city, if you can call it, that settles into its nighttime rhythm. Dogs bark near the riverbank. Frogs croak in the canals. Somewhere, a boatman sings softly, his or slicing the moonlit Nile. This isn't the silent desert people imagine. It's alive, a kind of nocturnal hum. You lie down on a mat near the doorway. The breeze seeps in through the lattice window, just a few wooden slats angled to keep out the glare of day while letting air move through. There's no glass, of course. Glass exists, but only as tiny ornaments or amulets, not something to fill windows. The house breathes with the desert. It's both fragile and timeless. As your eyes adjust, you start noticing little details: how the Egyptians built their homes around airflow. Thick walls kept out the heat. Small, high openings vented rising warmth. It's an ancient principle. Modern architects still copy in eco-homes. Historians still argue whether the lower classes invented these clever designs out of necessity or if elite builders borrowed them later for comfort. Either way, the result is the same. Cooler air inside, even without fans or ice. You take a deep breath. The air smells of clay and faint incense, burnt resin left over from a household prayer earlier in the evening. Egyptians never really separated the sacred from the ordinary. Even going to bed was an act of ritual. Before sleep, a small offering to Bes, the squat, bearded god who guards against nightmares, might sit near the head of the bed. A woman might whisper a charm into the night, asking for protection from scorpions, or worse, the spirits that wandered between dreams. The flickering lamp casts shadows across hieroglyphs etched into a wall niche. You can't read them, but you sense their power. Maybe a verse from the Book of the Dead, or just someone's wish for a quiet night. Egyptians truly believed words had life. To write something was to make it real. So a prayer on the wall wasn't decoration, it was defense. The desert night can turn surprisingly cold. You reach for a sheet of linen, soft but thin, barely more than a whisper between you and the air. Linen was the textile of choice, breathable, light, and made from the flax that grew along the riverbanks. Making it was a long, rhythmic process, soaking the flax stalks, beating them, spinning fibers, weaving them on upright looms. Even commoners prized good linen. Pharaohs were buried in it, and here you are, just grateful it's not wool. As you lie there, you hear the faint buzz of a mosquito near your ear. Egyptians had their ways of dealing with that too. They sometimes used smoke from burning frankincense or myrrh as a repellent, pleasant-smelling but effective. Others smeared themselves with oils mixed with herbs, though some recipes included crocodile dung, which historians still argue whether was ritual, medicine, or just ancient trolling. Either way, you decide to skip that experiment tonight. The stars outside shimmer like a million cold eyes. You can see the Milky Way stretching across the sky, bright enough to cast its own glow. Egyptians mapped their heavens carefully. The goddess Nut arched above the earth, swallowing the sun each evening and giving birth to it at dawn. To sleep under her was to sleep under eternity itself. For farmers, sailors, and priests alike, the sky was the calendar, the clock, the divine face of time. You roll onto your side, and the ground creaks softly. Somewhere in the distance, a donkey brays, answered by another. The air moves, gentle and dry. You can almost feel your sweat evaporate. The desert is cruel by day, but merciful by night, if you know how to work with it. Ancient Egyptians did. They didn't fight the climate. They adapted their routines around it. People worked early mornings and late afternoons. Midday was for rest, shade, and preservation. Even the gods respected that rhythm. In the stillness, you think about how the Egyptians imagined night not as emptiness, but as the realm of the hidden sun god Ra, traveling through the underworld. Each night he fought serpents of chaos so the morning could be reborn. When you slept, you were symbolically joining him on that journey. Every sunrise meant you'd survived another passage through darkness. You shift on the mat and feel the rough weave press into your skin. It's oddly grounding. Egyptians didn't fear the earth beneath them. They came from it, after all. The very word for coffin, Nabank, means Lord of Life, a reminder that endings and beginnings were part of the same loop. That's why, even in sleep, they mirrored the gestures of death, lying flat, hands at sides, face to the east, awaiting rebirth. Outside, the wind picks up a little. You can hear the rustle of palm fronds, the distant rush of water in irrigation canals. The Nile's rhythm governs everything here. The flow of life, the farming, the rest. Without it, there would be no Egypt, no linen, no cool nights. You're lulled by that thought, an entire civilization rocking gently to the pulse of one river. You glance again at the tiny lamp. The oil's running low. Its flame trembles, then steadies. A small gecko skitters across the wall, chasing the moths drawn to the light. Egyptians saw omens in everything. A lizard crossing your path could be good luck or bad, depending on who you asked. Historians still debate whether superstition governed their nights more than science, but maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. For them, the world wasn't divided into magic and reason. It was all one continuous fabric of meaning. Your eyelids grow heavy. You're not sure if it's from the heat or the hum of the night. The last thing you see before sleep is the outline of the Nile through the window, glinting silver under the moon. Somewhere, a priest is marking the stars. A fisherman is setting his net. A child is whispering a prayer to base. You're part of it, now a guest in their rhythm, drifting into the same soft darkness that has held Egypt for millennia. You wake up to the faint creak of wood and rope beneath you. The first thing you notice, besides the mild kink in your back, is that your bed is more of an idea than a cushion. You're lying on a wooden frame strung with a web of woven cords, slightly sagging in the middle like a tired smile. This, you realize, is luxury by ancient Egyptian standards. The rope bed was a genius invention for its time. Instead of solid boards that trapped heat, this airy design allowed air to move underneath your body. It's the original ventilated mattress made to survive nights where the air feels like soup. The ropes are pulled tight enough to support you, but loose enough to flex with your weight. The craftsmanship is simple, yet deliberate. The wood smoothed by hand. The cords plaited from plant fibers, palm, or flax. You can imagine the rhythm of someone pulling the ropes taut, knotting each corner, testing the tension with a quick tug. You run your fingers along the surface, feeling the grooves worn in the wood by generations of sleepers. The Egyptians believed that life continued after death, so even their beds were built to last literally. Archaeologists have found rope beds buried in tombs, meant to serve their owners in the afterlife. One of Queen Hedefir's beds, discovered near Giza, was made from hardwood covered in gold leaf. Imagine trying to sleep comfortably on something that gleamed like a mirror in torchlight. As you shift your weight, the ropes give a small groan. There's no mattress here, just a mat or a folded linen sheet on top. Softness wasn't the goal. Durability and coolness were. Egyptians slept directly on these woven frames, their bodies accustomed to firmness. The more affluent might add a thin padding of reeds or wool-stuffed linen, but even then, soft was a relative term. The irony, of course, is that while modern people spend fortunes chasing orthopedic perfection, these ancient sleepers probably had spines of steel. You stretch out and the rope sighs again. The bed's legs are carved slightly higher near the head, a subtle incline. It's not an accident. The Egyptians believed sleeping with your head elevated helped the spiritor Ka exit the body more freely during dreams. Practically, it also kept your face out of the direct line of crawling insects. The desert's hospitality had limits, after all. A breeze drifts through the window slats, stirring the faint smell of palm resin and smoke. You imagine this bed centuries ago, in a house much like this one, someone lying exactly where you are, eyes closed, listening to the same night sounds. They'd trust this fragile frame to hold them, night after night. Through the seasons of the Nile, it's humbling and strangely comforting. A tiny squeak interrupts your thoughts. You glance down and spot a mouse darting under the chest near the wall. Egyptians didn't exactly have pest control, but cats did the job brilliantly. In fact, many families kept cats indoors specifically for that reason. If you're lucky, one might curl up on the foot of your bed's soft fur, watchful eyes. Bastet, the cat goddess, was both a household protector and a symbol of grace. Having a cat sleep beside you wasn't superstition, it was safety, wrapped in purrs. Now you notice the construction of the bed more clearly. The joints are pegged, not nailed. Nails existed, but were rare and expensive. Everything fits together with precision tenons and mortises, a puzzle of patience. You realize how much time it took to build even a single bed. It's easy to forget that this civilization, while monumental in scale, thrived on small crafts. The rope bed wasn't just a household object. It was a piece of technology, one that spread far beyond Egypt. Versions of this design show up later in Greece and Rome. The Egyptians quietly taught the world how to sleep better. You roll over, testing the sturdiness. The cords creak, but hold. There's a faint rhythmic bounce that feels oddly modern, primitive memory foam, if you will. Still, it's far from plush. Above you, the ceiling is low and dark, woven with reed mats. A few small cracks let in moonlight, drawing thin silver lines across your blanket. You notice a hook near your headrest, a spot for hanging amulets or charms. Base, the dwarf god of laughter and protection, is a favorite. His face, carved from ivory or clay, peers down with a wide grin and bulging eyes. He's ridiculous looking, but that's the point. Evil spirits were said to flee from laughter, and Bess's face was comedy weaponized. You reach up and touch the carved edge of the headboard. It's not just decoration, it's storytelling. Scenes of daily life, lotus flowers, even hieroglyphic prayers sometimes ran along the wood. Each symbol served as both art and insurance policy, protection in the world of dreams. Historians still argue whether these engravings were chosen by artisans or dictated by priests. But one thing's clear: they made sleeping a sacred act. As the night deepens, the sounds outside quieten. The Nile murmurs softly in the distance, and the breeze smells faintly of wet clay. You shift again, and the rope bed creaks in reply like it's talking back. It's not an unpleasant sound, just part of the rhythm. The Egyptians didn't chase silence. They lived in symphony with their environment. A bed was part of that music. You close your eyes for a moment, imagining the difference between your bed and the pharaohs. In the palaces of Thebes or Amarna, beds were elevated works of art frames carved from ebony or cedar, inlaid with gold, silver, and semi-precious stones. They had footboards shaped like lion paws or lotus buds, the symbols of power and rebirth. Servants might fan them with palm fronds or burn incense nearby to keep insects away. For them, even sleeping was theater. Meanwhile, in the worker villages at Deir el-Medina, the artisans who built royal tombs lay on much simpler versions: plain wood, rope, and a single linen sheet. And yet, their designs were not sloppy copies. They were just as precise, just as functional. A rope bed, whether gilded or bare, did the same essential job. Kept you cool, kept you off the floor, kept you dreaming. You grinned to yourself, half awake, thinking how similar people still are. We chase comfort, but always circle back to the same basics: airflow, support, a sense of safety. You wonder how many arguments were had over who got the good side of the bed, or whether ancient spouses complained about snoring. Spoiler: probably all of them. The room shifts subtly as the wind moves through. The ropes beneath you hum faintly, almost musical. Egyptians were masters of rhythm. They built it into everything, from their art to their architecture to their sleep. You can imagine the slow creak of these beds across a whole neighborhood, each one slightly out of sync, creating a sleepy lullaby of wood and fiber. You open your eyes again and spot a jar near the wallet's wide mouth covered with cloth. That's where the household kept drinking water, cooled by natural evaporation through porous clay. Clever touch. And another reminder that the Egyptians were engineers of comfort long before the word engineering existed. Even their beds worked like cooling systems: air circulating through woven cords, moisture evaporating into the night. You start to appreciate how deeply practical their culture was. Your back protests slightly. You shift to your side again, imagining a noble complaining to a servant centuries ago about the same stiffness. Maybe they'd add a thin mat of papyrus reeds, the ancient equivalent of a mattress topper. Maybe they'd lie there watching the flicker of lamplight, thinking about harvests, taxes, love, or death, human thoughts that haven't changed in 3,000 years. The creak of the ropes becomes hypnotic. You feel suspended between earth and air, the line between wakefulness and sleep blurring. You realize that the Egyptians didn't need plush bedding or air conditioning. They had design born of patience, trial, and necessity. Their comfort came not from softness, but from balance with their environment, with their gods, and with the rhythm of the desert itself. You let your eyes drift shut again. The ropes cradle you not softly, but firmly, insistently. A reminder that rest, even in the harshest place on earth, is possible with a little ingenuity. You wake again, the ropes beneath you faintly imprinting a grid across your back. Morning is already threatening through the cracks in the ceiling, but you stay still, caught between night's cool hush and the first pulse of heat. Beside you lies a sheet of linen, twisted from sleep. You lift it, and the weight surprises you. It's lighter than air, woven so fine it almost disappears against your fingers. This is where the story of Egyptian comfort becomes a tale of fabric. Linen, the cloth that ruled their nights and dressed their dead. Linen was everything here. It wasn't just bedding. It was currency, offering, and social signal. The whiter and softer your linen, the higher your status. Pharaohs wrapped themselves in hundreds of yards of it for eternity. Workers cherished a single well-washed sheet. You smooth your palm over the weave, noticing how cool it feels even after hours of contact. That's no-accident. Flax fibers naturally wick away sweat and allow air to move freely. Egyptians didn't just choose linen for beauty. They chose it for survival. Outside, the first vendors shout across the dusty lanes. A donkey brays and a woman's voice carries over the rooftops something about bread or onions. You stay in bed, studying the sheet like an archaeologist of the present. It's soft but not silky. This isn't luxury so much as engineering. Linen begins with the humble flax plant, grown along the riverbanks in rich, dark soil. Farmers soaked the stalks in water until the fibers loosened, then pounded them with wooden mallets to separate them. The smell must have been something fierce. Wet vegetation, sour water, but it worked. After that, women and apprentices spun the fibers into thread, their hands moving so fast the motion blurred in the lamplight. Historians still argue whether men or women dominated the linen industry, but evidence leans toward women, especially in household production. Their skill shaped comfort for an entire civilization. You can imagine them sitting in doorways, twisting fibers between thumb and forefinger, gossiping under the shade while their children played in the dust. Those threads later became the sheets that cooled pharaohs and peasants alike. You lift the linen to your face. It smells faintly of something. Floral lotus oil, maybe? Egyptians loved to scent their fabrics, both for pleasure and to mask the odor of daily life. The process was simple. Soak the linen in perfumed water and hang it to dry in the sun. As the fabric warmed, the oils set into the fibers. When night fell, that same fabric felt cool and smelled faintly divine. Imagine walking into a noblewoman's chamber in Thebes. She's sitting by an open window as servants fold her linen, some as white as crushed shells, others dyed pale blue or soft gold. In a corner, a small brazier burns myrrh. The scent mingles with the breeze and the faint sweetness of river air. She might have a dozen sets of bedding, each with a slightly different weave. Coarse for summer, tighter for winter. The linen breathes, bending to the needs of the season. You can't help but admire the logic. Luxury with purpose. For poorer households, linen was scarcer, often reused until threadbare. When a sheet tore, it became bandages, cleaning rags, or wrapping for sacred statues. Nothing went to waste. In tombs, archaeologists have found entire layers of recycled linen, former garments, turned into burial cloths. You can still see faint creases, traces of stitching, even hand-inked names. Each thread carries the memory of someone's life. It's oddly touching, like finding an old t-shirt you once loved in a drawer full of keepsakes. You drape the linen over your legs and notice how it instantly cools the skin. Egyptians understood thermal dynamics long before the term existed. A thin, tightly woven sheet traps just enough moisture to encourage evaporation, nature's own air conditioning. During the day, they'd hang damp linen in doorways to cool incoming air. At night, the same fabric doubled as protection from dust and insects. You shift slightly, and a strip of sunlight crawls across your foot. The temperature rises almost immediately. The linen absorbs the change but resists it, holding on to the night's faint chill. You can see why they obsessed over this stuff. Linen wasn't just fabric, it was a daily miracle, the only thing standing between comfort and chaos. You recall something you once read, that high priests wore only the purest white linen because it symbolized ritual cleanliness. It wasn't just spiritual, it was practical. Linen was easier to wash, dried fast, and didn't hold odor like wool. Even commoners bathed regularly and washed their linens often, despite living in a desert. Ancient Egypt might have been hot, but it wasn't dirty. Their hygiene standards would have shamed most of medieval Europe. You lie there thinking of the workers who produced this luxury, farmers knee-deep in river water, spinners hunched under the glare of the sun, dyers stirring pots of mineral pigment. Historians still debate whether the bleaching process used natural sunlight alone or chemical mixtures like natron, a desert salt. Whatever the method, the result was breathtaking. A well-bleached sheet gleamed almost blue-white in the moonlight, an ethereal contrast to the earth-colored walls and clay floors. The bed creaks softly as you sit up. You stretch and drape the linen around your shoulders like a cloak. The texture is soothing, firm, dry, faintly crisp. You can see how this became a marker of civilization itself. Linen was order, it was cleanliness. It was light harnessed into thread. It made sense that mummies were wrapped in it. To be buried in linen was to be swaddled in eternity. Outside, the street brightens. Dust motes dance like sparks in the air. You can hear the thud of footsteps, the distant splash of water from a bucket. Someone is already scrubbing their linens by the river, beating them clean on smooth stones. It's rhythmic, almost musical. Egyptians loved pattern, and repetition it was their way of controlling the chaos of life. Whether carving hieroglyphs or weaving fabric, the process mattered as much as the outcome. You look down at your own sheet again and notice faint stitching near the hem, tiny, deliberate, maybe a name or household mark. In a time before tags or brands, identity was sewn in. You can imagine someone years ago leaning over this very edge, threading a needle by lamplight, muttering about how the day never ends. You smile. Some things never change. The heat builds quickly. You feel the linen begin to dry where sweat touches it, cooling your skin again as it evaporates. Ingenious Egyptians didn't need science textbooks. They lived the experiments daily. Even their gods wore linen. Statues of Osiris and Isis were often dressed in real fabric during temple rituals. To drape a god was to keep the divine comfortable, a very Egyptian concept. You decide to stand and shake out the sheet. A small puff of dust rises. You sneeze quietly and laugh. The echo sounds strange in the empty room. For a second, you imagine laughter from long-ago children playing on the floor while their parents fold laundry. A whole civilization built around rhythm. Rise, work, wash, rest, repeat. Maybe it's that rhythm that let them endure millennia of sun and sand. The fabric flutters in the window light, translucent as water. You can almost see the weave grid of fine threads crossing each other, forming tiny diamonds where they meet. Each intersection a testament to patience. It's hypnotic if you stare too long. You can understand why the Egyptians saw divine order in geometry. Linen was mathematics you could sleep under. Some scholars think the process of weaving itself held ritual power. Women who spun flax were seen as life-givers, their looms echoing the patterns of creation. To weave was to mimic the gods, binding chaos into structure. You can feel that energy now, running through every thread. It's humbling, really, to realize that even your bedsheet carries a philosophy. You lie back down, wrapping yourself again. The texture presses gently against your cheek, coarse enough to feel real, smooth enough to soothe. You close your eyes and imagine the night ahead, another quiet descent into Egyptian sleep. You'll sweat, yes, but the linen will wick it away. You'll dream, maybe, of fields of flax swaying under a bronze sun, their pale blue flowers trembling in the heat. And when morning comes again, the sheet will still be hair-creased, soft, slightly fragrant, doing exactly what it was made to do. Make the impossible desert just a little more bearable. The night deepens again, and you're half awake, lying in the same small mud brick room, watching the oil lamp dance. The air is warmed, too warm, and even your light linen sheet feels heavy now. The Nile wind that cooled you earlier has faded. The walls breathe heat back at you, a silent reminder that in Egypt, the desert always wins eventually. You shift, restless. Then remember, the Egyptians had tricks for this. Clever ones that made desert nights not just tolerable, but even comfortable. You peer through the wooden lattice, and there it is, a small clay jar, half buried in the sand beneath the window ledge. Its surface glistens with moisture, the result of water seeping slowly through its porous walls and evaporating into the air. You reach down, touch the jar, it's cool to the fingertips, as if it holds a fragment of the river inside. This little miracle, called an alea by later cultures, was Egypt's ancient refrigerator. By placing water in these unglazed jars and positioning them near airflow, Egyptians harnessed evaporation to chill the air around them. When the wind passed over the damp surface, it carried the coolness inside, like a natural air conditioner. You exhale in knots, so simple, so elegant. No electricity, no machines, just physics, born from patience and sun. You notice another trick nearby, a woven reed mat hung over the doorway, dripping slightly. Someone's poured water over it earlier. As the air moves through, it turns crisp and pleasant, like the faint breath of dawn. You step closer and let it brush against your arm. It's almost cold. The Egyptians, it seems, turned dryness into their greatest ally. They learned how to make heat work for them, not against them. A faint chuckle escapes you. We build skyscrapers and still can't cool a room without humming machines. You whisper to no one. These ancient people figured it out thousands of years ago with jugs and damp cloth. You glance toward the ceiling. The air up there shimmers faintly, hotter, heavier. Egyptians built for that too. Some homes had small vents near the top of walls, little holes that let rising heat escape. Others used domed roofs or open courtyards where hot air drifted upward and out, pulling cooler air in from below. This simple convection, what architects today call the stack effect, made houses breathe. The Egyptians didn't have thermodynamics, but they had observation. When you live in a desert long enough, comfort becomes science. You return to your bed, noticing now the clay floor itself is cooler than the air. People sometimes dampen the ground before sleep, letting the slow evaporation create a cool layer near their mats. You kneel, run your palm along the surface, and it's truculently damp, radiating relief. Somewhere outside, a jug splashes as someone refills it. You imagine the nightly ritual, fetching water at dusk, dampening cloths, hanging them in doorways, setting jars where the breeze would find them. It's not just household management, it's choreography against the sun. The Egyptians weren't naive about the heat. They structured their entire days around it. Work began at dawn, paused through the fiery noon, and resumed in late afternoon. Evenings were sacred not only for worship, but for rest. The word for night in their language, gur, carried shades of peace, recovery, renewal. In a sense, cooling off wasn't just physical light, was spiritual maintenance. You lie back, resting your head on the hard headrest, still getting used to that, but the air around you feels noticeably lighter now. The faint breeze kisses your skin, carrying the scent of damp earth and lotus. Maybe that's another trick, scent as comfort. Egyptians believed fragrance had cooling power, both literal and symbolic. Burning kifi, a blend of wine, honey, myrrh, and herbs, was said to soothe the body and the gods alike. You inhale. You could almost believe it works. Still, the desert tests its guests. The lamp flickers low, and your eyelids grow heavy again, but not before you notice one more thing. The window's shadow shifting. A pale rectangle of moonlight slides across the opposite wall, and you realize it's reflected by the Nile itself. That soft shimmer dancing across rooms like ghost water must have lulled countless Egyptians to sleep. Imagine lying here, centuries ago, as silver light ripples over you and warm air turns cool enough to dream. You turn to one side, thinking about all the subtle inventions hidden in these quiet homes. Water jars, wet cloth, airflow vents, nothing loud or complicated, yet each designed with precision. Historians still argue whether the earliest versions of these cooling systems were born from temple architecture or domestic necessity. Some say priests developed airflow corridors to keep sanctuaries bearable during rituals. Others insist the farmers invented them first, simply because they had to. Either way, both priests and peasants benefited. Comfort trickled upward and downward. a rare kind of equality in a land obsessed with hierarchy. A small noise interrupts your thoughts, a soft splash outside. You look out again and see a figure in the moonlight, perhaps a servant or laborer, pouring water along the roof edge. At first, you think they're cleaning, but no, they're cooling. By wetting the flat clay roof, they create an evaporative layer that chills the room beneath. Ingenious. Roof sleeping, too, was common. Families would spread mats on top, where breezes were strongest, and sleep beneath a canopy of stars. Some even built low walls for safety, turning rooftops into open-air bedrooms. You picture yourself up there, lying under Nut, the sky goddess, feeling the universe press down gently like a blanket. You close your eyes again and listen to the rhythm of dripping water and crickets. It's soothing, almost like rain, though Egypt rarely sees it. You realize that this sound, this nightly ritual of cooling, was their version of the hum of a fan, the same hypnotic background that quiets your thoughts and pulls you toward dreams. Still half awake, you wonder what it would have been like during the hottest months, July, August, when the Nile swelled from rains far to the south. The humidity rose, the air thickened, and sleeping became an art form. Maybe they dampened their linens before bed, or even sprinkled the floor with natron water for a faint, salty chill. Some used palm leaf fans, waving them slowly in rhythm, or hired attendants to do it through the night. The pharaohs likely had a small army of human air conditioner servants, fanning them with ostrich feathers until dawn. You can almost hear the gentle huff, huff, huff in the darkness. The flame of your lamp flickers lower still. Its glow turns amber, then red, reflecting in the polished clay of the water jar. You realize the Egyptians had a way of controlling light for comfort, too. Lamps were made to burn low at night, bright enough to see, dim enough to calm. The oil was thick, the wick short, and the shadows long. Modern people pay for warm light bulbs. Egyptians just used warm light. You smile to yourself. They really thought of everything, you murmur. The room has cooled. Now, the wet mat at the doorway is drying now, but its job is done. You pull your sheet close again, the linen now dry and faintly scented from the air. It's not luxurious, but it's gentle, the kind of comfort earned, not bought. You start to drift. In that hazy border between waking and sleep, your mind wanders through centuries of adaptation. Desert tribes camping with damp cloaks over their heads, Nubian builders perfecting the art of ventilation, priests chanting beneath stone ceilings that funneled heat upward. It's the same story everywhere. Humans learning to trick the climate into kindness. The night outside hums with quiet life. Frogs near the canal, the slow flap of bats, the whisper of reeds. You imagine a family on a rooftop, the mother telling her child a story to pass the heat until the cool winds arrive. Maybe it's a myth about Ra's nightly voyage through the underworld, how even the sun god needs rest from his work. He cools his fire, she might say, so that we can dream. The lamp finally gutters out, leaving the room in perfect darkness. You can feel, not see, the air still moving. The cooling tricks still at work, the jar exhaling moisture, the damp mat sighing its last cool breath. You're aware of your heartbeat, steady, unhurried. Somewhere deep in your memory, you think you can hear the Nile itself. It's whispering softly through the night like it's telling you, breathe, sleep, survive the heat. You smile, roll onto your side, and let the desert cradle you. The coolness of the night lingers, but your neck is stiff. You blink in the moonlight and reach behind your head, feeling the smooth, curved surface of the object beneath it. Not a pillow, not anything soft. It's stone cold, solid, yet shaped with care. The ancient Egyptian headrest. You lift it into the dim light. It's carved from ivory, its arc shaped like a crescent to cradle the skull just above the neck. The base is sturdy, heavy enough to stay in place through the night. You turn it in your hands. It seems absurd. How could anyone sleep on something so hard? But here, in this civilization of precision and ritual, even discomfort had meaning. The Egyptians didn't see sleep as mere rest. They saw it as a delicate crossing between the world of the living and the realm of the gods. The head, the seat of the spirit, had to be kept safe. The headrest wasn't just furniture, 'twas protection. You lower your head back onto it and stare at the ceiling. It's strange at first, the chill of stone biting your skin, but the angle keeps your head lifted, your airway open. You feel a faint ease in your breathing. Perhaps they knew that too. The simple curve kept one's head high enough to let air pass freely, a kind of primitive health measure. And in a land where sand and insects prowled, keeping your face off the ground mattered. You shift slightly, feeling how the rounded edge fits just so beneath your skull. Maybe it wasn't meant for comfort in the modern sense, but for purpose. The Egyptians prized posture, balance, symmetry, even in sleep. You whisper into the quiet. Did it work for you, too? Imagining someone centuries ago lying in this same position, eyes closed, trusting the same smooth curve. Some headrests were carved from wood, lightweight and elegant. Others from alabaster, calcite, or faience, glazed in soft blues and greens. Archaeologists have found them buried beside the dead, often decorated with protective deities. One common figure is best the dwarf god, with lion's mane and bulging eyes, fierce and kind all at once. He guarded against nightmares, snakes, and evil spirits. Many headrests bore his image, as if to say, "You may close your eyes, but I am watching for you." You picture the craftsman at work chiseling ivory, shaping stone, engraving the outline of base with steady hands. They knew these pieces would serve both the living and the dead. When a person passed on, their headrest went with them into the tomb, ensuring comfort and safety in the afterlife. A line from an ancient spell drifts through your mind. Something read once in translation, "May your head be raised, may your neck be firm. May you awaken to life eternal." The headrest was not just to support, but to lift. The Egyptians imagined resurrection as awakening, a grand rising from the sleep of death. Head lifted high was a symbol of readiness for rebirth. You turn the headrest over again, admiring its polish. The surface gleams faintly in the low light, worn smooth by centuries of touch. Perhaps, long ago, someone oiled it nightly with fragrant balm to keep the ivory supple. You imagine the scent-sweet myrrh mixed with traces of smoke and linen. For the wealthy, headrests could be ornate, inlaid with gold or inscribed with hieroglyphs. The poor made theirs from clay or wood, but the shape stayed the same, proof that comfort and ritual crossed every boundary. You stretch your neck, adjusting once more. The first few breaths feel awkward, then your muscles begin to relax. The cool surface draws away warmth from your skin, and you realize perhaps this too was a desert adaptation. Soft bedding holds heat, stone does not. Sleeping with your head on a cool curve might have been the only way to keep balance through the long, heavy nights. Outside, you hear soft laughter. Two workers, perhaps, crossing the courtyard. You catch a fragment of their conversation, something about waking early for grain rations. Then a chuckle, then silence. You think of how they might sleep after long days in the fields, their backs sore, their arms heavy. Maybe they too used headrests not ivory, but rough wood end maybe. After a few minutes of discomfort, the weight of exhaustion made anything bearable. There's an old saying from the workers' village at Deir el Medina. Even the stone is soft when Ra has set, meaning, after labor, even hardship feels like rest. You roll onto your side, curious how the headrest handles movement. It stays firm, supporting you as you turn. You think of archaeologists discovering these pieces intact in tombs, untouched for millennia, yet still balanced perfectly, as if waiting for their owners to return. And perhaps, in a way, they do return. Every night, when you dream, you cross into the same darkness the Egyptians once mapped with gods and symbols. To them, sleep was a rehearsal for death, and waking was rebirth. The headrest became a sacred bridge, small, cold gate between the two. You close your eyes again, and drift into a half-dream. In your vision, the room changes. The walls shimmer with painted hieroglyphs, bright blues, reds, and golds catching torchlight. A priest stands beside you, his head shaven, his linen robe pure white. He holds a headrest like yours, carved with a figure of base. He sets it gently beneath a mummified head and whispers, "Rise with your head held high, O Blessed One. May your rest be eternal." The vision fades, and you open your eyes. The night is silent again, and the ordinary clay walls return. But now you feel the weight of meaning behind this simple object. To the ancient Egyptians, nothing was just practical. Every tool, every motion carried spiritual resonance. You think of modern pillows, soft, shapeless, forgotten each morning, and laugh quietly. Theirs were harder, stranger, yet somehow more alive. The moon drifts behind thin clouds, and shadows soften around you. The cool stone presses gently against your neck, steady and sure. It's not comfort in the sense of indulgence, but in the sense of trust in craft, in tradition, in the rhythm of breath and silence. You imagine families preparing for bed centuries ago, mothers tucking children under linen, fathers adjusting headrests by lamplight, a small base amulet hung above each bed. The world outside, full of heat and insects and noise, but inside, there's order. There's ritual. In the corner of your mind, you recall a small exhibit label from a museum once visited. Headrest. C. 1300 BCE ivory, with depiction of base, believed to protect the sleeper's spirit from harm. You remember staring at it then, curious but detached. Now, lying here, it feels alive, personal, intimate, a bridge across time. Your eyes close once more, and you let yourself drift into the kind of half-sleep where reality blurs with memory. You dream of the craftsman shaping the stone, of the priest blessing it, of the sleeper resting upon it. The sound of carving blends with the soft rush of the Nile, the hum of desert wind, the pulse of a civilization that refused to separate the sacred from the ordinary. And in your dream, the headrest speaks not in words, but in feeling. It says, "Lift your head. The night is long, but dawn always comes. When you wake again, the air is cooler. The faintest light seeps through the lattice window. The world outside hums with crickets and frogs. You stretch, your neck surprisingly refreshed. You run your hand along the headrest's curve, and for a brief second, you understand why the Egyptians slept this way, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Comfort for them wasn't softness. It was alignment with the body, the gods, the earth, the sun. Everything in harmony, even in sleep. You rise slowly, set the headrest upright beside your bed, and whisper a small thank you to the craftsman, to base, to the nameless sleepers who shaped these nights long before you. Outside, the horizon begins to pale. The cool air thickens with scent lotus, damp clay, and faint smoke from an early kitchen fire. Somewhere, a rooster calls. The headrest gleams in the dawn's first light, still cold, still waiting. And for a moment, it feels less like an artifact and more like a companion, silent, steadfast, guarding the bridge between dreaming and waking. You wake to a quiet unlike any other, soft, suspended, the kind that sits just before dawn when even the insects pause. The faint rustle of papyrus leaves outside tells you the breeze is moving again. Trickling through narrow alleys and into open windows, the air smells faintly of water and ash. You turn your head, and there it is, a small clay lamp on the table beside you. Its flame a mere blue whisper above a pool of oil. This little thing, fragile as breath, is what keeps the night alive in Egypt. The Egyptians didn't fear the dark exactly, but they respected it. The night was the domain of hidden gods, wandering spirits, and strange dreams. To keep watch, they used light the way we use comfort, gently, strategically. That lamp's glow is both protection and poetry. It's made of clay, smooth and pale, the rim slightly blackened from use. Inside burns castor or sesame oil, thick and faintly sweet-smelling. The wick linen again soaks in the oil, drinking it greedily. You can almost see the flame licking the edges of the cottony twist. You lean closer, your shadow bending over it like a curious ghost. The light dances across the room, catching on the edge of a copper jug, on a few carved figures, on the faint chalk drawings etched into the wall. It's barely enough to see, but somehow it's perfect. In the desert, light wasn't meant to conquer the dark, was meant to tame it just enough. You cup your hand around the flame. It flickers in the tiny breeze and steadies again, as if sighing in relief. Egyptians would have placed lamps like this all around a sleeping space on ledges, by doorways, beside beds to ward off spirits. Some lamps were shaped like lotuses, others like ducks or fish, floating eternally on a river of light. You wonder what they must have thought as they drifted to sleep watching this fragile glow. Maybe the flicker was a sign of Ra's return, the sun god rehearsing his rebirth through every tiny flame. There's an old belief, half myth, half memory, that each night Ra sailed his golden boat through the underworld. The stars were torches carried by gods, and the lamps of humans mirrored those celestial lights. In that soft logic, to light a lamp before sleep wasn't just practical light, was cosmic collaboration. You, tiny human, doing your part to help the sun rise again. You sit up, the linen sliding off your shoulders, and the lamp throws a gentle halo over your skin. The shadows it makes are strange, your face doubled on the wall, your hands stretching into the ceiling. You realize how this light must have fascinated them, so simple, so alive. Historians still argue whether Egyptians used lamps throughout the night or only for short periods before sleeping. Some tomb paintings suggest continuous glow. Others hint that lamps were extinguished after prayers to save oil. Either way, the ritual mattered. Before bed, a family might recite small protective charms, feed the lamp's wick, and ask the gods for safe passage through dreams. You reach for a small clay bowl beside the lamp. It holds cool water, reflecting the flame in trembling ripples. You dip your fingers in, tracing the reflection. And suddenly, the whole scene feels ancient beyond measure. The silence, the balance of elements. Fire, water, air, earth, fall present, all perfectly tuned. For a moment, you think of your own electric lamp's bright, sterile, instant. You laugh quietly. The Egyptians would have found them blinding, unnatural. Their world was built for subtler transitions. Night didn't switch on or off, it breathed. The oil in the lamp releases a faint, scent-nutty vegetal. You imagine it mixing with perfume from your linen sheets. The dry mineral tang of the walls and the ghost of incense burned earlier. Each night, this blend created the sensory lullaby of Egypt. It's a civilization that knew how to turn the smallest details into ritual. You blow gently on the flame, watching it bow but not die. The light trembles, and in that motion you catch the faintest movement near the floor, a scurry, a whisper of claws. A lizard or a beetle, maybe. You grin. The Egyptians had amulets for these too. Tiny bronze scarabs carved to keep creepy crawlies from visiting at night. Superstition or not, it's oddly comforting to think someone once believed in such protection so earnestly. The flame steadies again, and you feel its warmth stroke your cheek. You remember that some headrests were designed with small ledges nearby just to hold lamps of evidence, that even the poorest Egyptian wanted to sleep close to light. Light meant safety. Light meant Ra hadn't abandoned you. You pick up the lamp carefully. The clay is warm against your palm. As you tilt it slightly, the oil shifts with a sluggish gleam, almost alive. You wonder how many nights this same gesture has been repeated in history, someone refilling, someone trimming the wick, someone staring into the tiny pool of brightness as if waiting for an answer. In your mind, you see a priest tending lamps in the temple of Karnak, dozens of flames burning before statues of the gods. Each one must be fed, guarded, whispered over. Light is life, the priest might murmur. Light returns the soul. And maybe, just maybe, That belief seeped into every home, every ordinary night like this one. A joke comes to you suddenly. What would an Egyptian have thought of candles? You chuckle under your breath. They might have found them wasteful. Why burn wax when oil flows endlessly from the earth? Plus, an open flame near linen sheets. Even the gods might wince at that. You shake your head, amused by the thought of Base himself wagging a finger and muttering, "Not in my temple, friend." You set the lamp back down, watching how the light makes the room look larger than it is. The flicker reshapes, everything walls become landscapes, shadows become movement. Perhaps that's why they painted their tombs with such detail. In flickering light, the figures almost move, almost breathe. The line between sleep and eternity blurs. You lie down again, your eyes half closed, and stare at the small glow. The flame's rhythm syncs with your breathing. Inhale, the flame grows. Exhale, it softens. You start to feel that familiar Egyptian sense of harmony again, that gentle balance between worlds. They believed dreams were messages, sometimes from ancestors, sometimes from gods. Temples of dream incubation existed, where people slept hoping for divine visions. The dim lamplight probably helped half dark, half waking, the mind teetering between logic and mystery. Historians still debate whether dream rituals were medical or spiritual. Were priests interpreting psychology or prophecy? Maybe both. You can imagine a worshiper sleeping under a statue. Oil lamps flickering, praying that a god would whisper a cure or a warning in their dreams. The flame, steady beside them, would be the last earthly thing they saw before slipping into that other realm. The wick crackles faintly, drawing you back. You realize how fragile it is. Single puff of air and the entire night could vanish. Egyptians must have felt that fragility constantly. The rivers rise, the deserts heat, the balance between drought and flood. Maybe that's why they cherished stability in small things: a well-made bed, a clean sheet, a dependable flame. The oil's surface shimmers thin now. You know it'll fade soon. You take one last long look. The flame leans, steadies, then finally shrinks into a tiny orange bead before curling into smoke. The room darkens slowly, not abruptly. Just a gradual sigh into silence. You breathe in the faint trace of burnt linen from the wick, and think about how even this smell, sharp, dry, fleeting once, filled 1,000 Egyptian bedrooms. Outside, dawn begins to press faint pink into the horizon. You can't tell if you've slept or simply floated through the night, lulled by the rhythm of the lamp. The clay beside you is cool now, the wick charred. You touch it lightly, then whisper, "Good work, little one," as if thanking it for standing guard. In the half-light, you stretch your arms. The cool air kisses your skin. You're still tired, but peaceful. Maybe that's the point of all these ancient rituals, not to guarantee rest, but to prepare for it, to shape the night into something orderly, sacred, predictable. Because in a land of blazing sun and endless work, the night was a fragile sanctuary that had to be protected. And as you lie back once more, the sky outside turning from pink to pale gold, you feel that sanctuary settle around you again. The Egyptians didn't need electricity. They had oil, clay, breath, and time somehow. That was enough to keep the dark at bay. The next time you stir awake, the air feels heavier, humid, almost wet. The night has deepened, the stars blurring above the clay roof. Somewhere nearby, the sound of dripping water echoes, a jar being filled, a splash against stone. You sit up slowly, the linen sliding from your shoulders. And for the first time you notice something subtle but constant. The scent of herbs, faint and cool, drifting from a corner where a small basket sits. Egyptians, it seems, didn't just rely on linen and lamps to sleep. They surrounded themselves with fragrance, turning aroma into armor against heat, insects, and even nightmares. You rise and cross to the basket. Inside, bundles of dried plants are neatly tied together: mint, chamomile, blue lotus, and a few sprigs of something sharp and peppery. The faint dust of crushed petals tickles your nose. You lift one bundle and sniff. The scent is soft but vivid, and it pulls you instantly out of time. Imagine lying down after a day in the blinding sun. The smell of lotus and frankincense wrapping around you like a promise of coolness. The Egyptians were masters of fragrance. Not just perfume for beauty, but scent for sleep, for healing, for the soul's alignment. They burned Kifian incense made from honey, raisins, myrrh, cinnamon, and wine each night in temples and homes. The smoke spiraled lazily through rooms, coating everything in a warmth that eased the body and soothed the mind. To breathe Kifi, an ancient inscription says, is to inhale joy. You chuckle softly. They knew aromatherapy long before it had a name. You find a small bowl beside the herbs, half filled with oil, a linen wick floating in it. It's not lit. You lean down and sniff. The oil smells faintly floral and resinous. Maybe lotus or sweet flag. Egyptians used hundreds of plant oils for different purposes. Some to ward off mosquitoes, others to relax the body, others to honor the gods. You dip your finger in and rub a drop on your wrist. The scent blossoms instantly sweet, smoky, slightly bitter. It clings to your skin like a memory. In the stillness, you imagine a woman in Thebes 2,000 years ago, doing the same thing, rubbing scented oil into her arms before lying down. Her servant gently fanning her. Maybe she believes the scent will calm her dreams or invite Hathor, goddess of love and beauty, to bless her sleep. Maybe she just likes the way it feels. Either way, she knows what you're learning now. Comfort isn't just about touch. It's about smell, rhythm, and memory. A cool gust sneaks through the window, stirring the air. The mingling scents line in. Oil, old smoke form, something hypnotic. You lie back down, letting it wash over you. There's a whisper of laughter outside. Someone's still awake. A faint sound of singing drifts across the courtyard, low, repetitive, almost a chant. Egyptians often sang before sleep, simple lullabies or hymns to gods. One of the oldest fragments ever found begins, "Sleep, child of silence, sleep in the arms of the night." The idea makes you smile. They treated sleep not as weakness, but as sacred surrender. To fall asleep was to join the gods in their nightly cycle. The scent, the song, the cool air, they were all offerings, gentle ways of saying, "Take me softly into tomorrow." You shift, and the faint powder of herbs beneath your bed crackles. Some households sprinkled crushed herbs directly under mats or red frames to keep insects away. Mint, lavender, and juniper were common. A practical solution, yes, but also symbolic aromatic barriers to keep chaos out. You picture priests grinding herbs at dusk, whispering over them before distributing them to homes. Sleep in Egypt was curated as carefully as ceremony. Historians still argue whether Egyptians used herbal sachets strictly for hygiene, or if they attached deeper meaning to the scents. Considering how everything else in their world was spiritualized, it's hard to imagine they didn't. Every smell carried a story, every oil a prayer. It's frankincense to cleanse, myrrh for rebirth, lotus for transcendence. Even the dead were perfumed. Tombs were stocked with scented jars so the soul could rest in sweetness. You breathe deeply again, and the lotus note sharpens in your mind. The blue lotus wasn't just a flower, it was a symbol of the sun's rebirth, of sleep giving way to dawn. Egyptians drank it, steeped in wine, smoked it, soaked in it, even dreamed under its influence. Some say it had mild psychoactive effects, inducing calm euphoria. You grin, thinking, ancient Egypt, inventors of the first aromatherapeutic nightcap. You can imagine the scene. A group of friends reclining on cushions, sipping lotus wine under torchlight, the river gleaming outside. They talk, laugh, sing, then drift off one by one, lulled by scent and sound. The night carries them, gentle and endless. You roll onto your back, the ceiling lost in darkness. Somewhere above, bats flutter past, their wings whispering like fabric. you feel oddly safe. Maybe it's the air, thick with invisible history. Maybe it's the herbs, doing their ancient work. You smile into the dark and think of something amusing. What if ancient Egyptians had sleep influencers? Picture a scribe-turned-podcaster murmuring, "Hey guys, tonight we're diffusing a fresh batch of sacred lotus oil. Don't forget to anoint your wrists and hit that offering jar." You snort a laugh and instantly hush yourself, not wanting to wake the past. The night deepens, and the sounds fade. One by one, the singing stops. The breeze slows. You're alone again, floating in scent. You feel the weight of centuries of sleepers beneath you. Farmers, scribes, queens, priests, all inhaling this same perfume of night. There's a strange comfort in it, like a shared dream that never ends. You think of an inscription found in a worker's tomb. The scent of home is the scent of peace. Maybe that's the heart of it. To sleep well in a world of sand and heat, they needed reminders of stillness, smells that carried the promise of the Nile, of gardens, of life. The oil lamp beside you flickers suddenly, though you don't remember lighting it. For a moment, you wonder if you're still dreaming. The flame bends and dances as if stirred by invisible breath. You catch yourself whispering a thanks to Base again, the little guardian of sleep. Maybe he's amused that you're taking so long to understand how all this fits together. Egyptians believed scents were the language of the gods. They didn't just burn incense for atmosphere. They believed the smoke carried prayers upward. In their world, the divine didn't speak in thunder or light, it spoke in fragrance. Maybe that's why their night rituals were so fragrant. Each smell was a kind of dialogue. You inhale once more, and the air feels heavy with stories. You think of the ingredients of kifi: raisins for sweetness, myrrh for protection, cinnamon for warmth, honey for eternity. The recipe itself was a spell, meant to summon calm. Kifi for the heart, the texts say, so that sleep may come to one who is troubled. You let that thought sink in. They understood something timeless. That rest isn't just physical. It's emotional. You can't sleep without feeling safe, and safety begins with familiarity with smell, touch, rhythm. Outside, a soft rain begins to fall, rare but not impossible. The droplets tap the roof gently, a sound like fingers on drums. You imagine the ancient world outside the river swelling, frogs croaking, palms swaying in the dark. You breathe in, the air now thick with moisture and earth. Even the smells change: herbal sweetness, mixing with the metallic temps of wet dust. You turn on your side, pressing your cheek against cool linen. The pillow of your arm fits just right beneath your headrest, the scent of lotus clinging to your skin. You sigh. Sleep feels near, as if the gods themselves are humming lullabies through the rain. Before you drift away, one final thought, raises a small, curious question. Did they dream of us? Did those ancient sleepers, wrapped in linen and lotus, ever imagine people thousands of years later trying to understand their nights? Maybe, in some faint way, that's what dreams are: bridges across time. You close your eyes. The last thing you feel is the tickle of air scented with flowers that once grew along the Nile. The last thing you hear is rain on clay. The last thing you think is that maybe, just maybe, you've finally learned how to sleep like an Egyptian. You wake to the sound of something soft brushing stone, a faint rhythm, steady and close. The room is still dim, washed in the earliest gray of dawn. For a moment, you lie there, unsure whether it's still part of the dream. Then you see her, a servant, kneeling beside a low basin, sweeping the floor with a bundle of reeds. She hums quietly as she works, a tune so slow and circular it feels like time itself has slowed down to listen. The scent in the room has changed. The night's perfumes, lotus oil, herbs have faded into something sharper, fresher, crushed mint, damp earth, water. Morning has come, and with it, the first ritual of the day. The servant glances at you and smiles, dipping her fingers into the basin. She scatters a few drops into the air, a tiny rain that catches the light. To wake the room, she murmurs, You don't understand her words, but her tone tells you everything. Egyptian mornings began with purification. Before anyone ate, prayed, or worked, they washed faces, hands, mouths, even the floors of their rooms. It wasn't just hygiene, it was devotion. Cleanliness was divine order made visible. To wash was to rejoin the rhythm of Mat, the eternal balance between chaos and harmony. You sit up slowly, stretching beneath the linen. The servant offers you a small clay bowl filled with cool water. You dip your fingers in, then splash your face. The water shocks you awake. It's colder than you expect, with a faint metallic temps. The chill spreads down your spine, shaking off the last threads of sleep. Pure, she says, touching her chest lightly and then gestures toward the open window. The horizon glows pink now, the Nile glinting in the distance. Boats drift like dark petals across the surface. You can almost hear the world stretching, shaking off dreams. From outside comes a low call, rhythmic and musical. A man's voice chanting something over and over. It's not a prayer, you know, but the tone is unmistakable ritual greeting, the kind that belongs to sunrise. Awake, Ra, you whisper, remembering that the sun god himself was said to sleep each night and sail through darkness. The Egyptians didn't just worship the sunrise. They believed it was the proof that life could conquer death again and again. Every dawn was resurrection. The servant leaves quietly, her footsteps fading into the sound of morning. Birds begin to chatter in the reeds outside. A donkey brays somewhere down the street. And through it all comes another sound of faint knocking, the pulse of hammers on wood and stone. The city is alive again. You dress in a simple linen tunic, soft and light against your skin. The fabric smells faintly of smoke and sunlight. When you step outside, the air hits you like a warm wave-dry, buzzing with energy. The streets are narrow, lined with mud brick walls that glow golden in the light. There's no sense of hurry, but everything moves with purpose. Every gesture fits into something larger, invisible. You realize it's not chaos's rhythm. The Egyptians lived by cycles of the Nile, of the sun, of labor and rest. Every day repeated the same ancient choreography, yet each morning felt new, renewed by the first light. You followed the hum of voices to a nearby courtyard. A group of men and women stand around a table made of rough stone. They're sharing the first meal of the day. One of them gestures for you to join. You hesitate, then smile and sit beside him. On the table lies flatbread course, round, dusted with flour and a small bowl of what looks like beans or lentils, dark and steaming. Another bowl holds dried figs and dates. The smell is simple, earthy, comforting. The man tears off a piece of bread, dips it in the stew, and hands it to you. Eat, he says, and you do. It's delicious, rich, spiced with garlic and coriander, tasting faintly smoky. The bread is tough, but satisfying. You chew slowly, the warmth spreading through you. Around you, the others laugh softly between bites, their eyes half closed with contentment. No rush. No talk of schedules or time, just food, sunlight, and presence. You notice how they eat with quiet gratitude. Every few minutes, someone lifts their eyes to the sky, not as prayer exactly, but as acknowledgement. The sun is rising fast now, gold pouring down walls, setting the courtyard aglow. Someone murmurs, "Ra has seen us." Another nods. And we see him. You take another bite and feel something shift in understanding. For them, daily life wasn't separate from faith. Work was worship. Eating was thanks. Even waking up was a sacred act, repeating the God's own rebirth. As you eat, a boy enters the courtyard carrying a basket of small clay amulet-sized scarabs, ankhs. He lays them out carefully on a mat. The others glance at them, murmuring approval. The man beside you picks up a small blue scarab and presses it into your hand. "Protection," he says. You turn it over, tracing the carved lines. It's warm from the boy's basket, the surface smooth and comforting. The scarab symbol of Khepri, the morning aspect of the sun god. Who rolled the sun across the sky like a beetle rolling its ball of earth? The amulet feels alive in your palm, a small heartbeat of belief. You tuck it into your belt and thank him. The man smiles. "Keep it," he says, "so you do not forget the way back to morning." His words linger. Maybe he means it literally. Maybe he means more. The day unfolds slowly. You wander through the market, where traders shout greetings, where baskets of grain and fish and onions overflow. The smell is intoxicating yeast, smoke, sweat, and sweet figs. Everywhere, color, turquoise, beads, ochre powder, red cloth. And everywhere, rhythm, footsteps, voices, laughter. The world feels alive in a way that's both ancient and immediate. You stop at a stall where a woman sells perfumed oil. She dips a stick into a jar and lets a drop fall onto your wrist. The scent bursts open rose, honey, cedar. For joy, she says. You smile. Does it work? She shrugs with a grin. If you believe it does. Her stall faces the river, and for a moment you stand watching boats drift by, sails catching the wind. The Nile glitters, vast and serene, carrying the hum of the city on its surface. You realize that every sound, every scent, every movement here connects to the river. It's not just water, it's time itself, flowing, eternal, bringing life and memory in equal measure. As the sun climbs higher, the heat thickens. You retreat into the shade of a temple wall, where the air is cooler. A priest passes, carrying a bronze vessel that releases thin trails of smoke. You smell frankincense again, the same as last night, but sharper now, sacred and clean. He nods at you, perhaps recognizing the sleepless wonder still in your eyes. Inside the temple courtyard, workers are sweeping sand, refilling offering bowls, tending fires. There's no chanting, no ceremony, just quiet maintenance. The morning rituals are almost done. You watch as one priest pours a trickle of milk over a small statue of a cat. Another arranges flowers before an image of Hathor. The motions are simple, precise, reverent. You think of how this must feel to them. Every morning reenacting creation. Every sunrise, a reminder that the world can begin again. It's a rhythm older than any empire, stronger than any king. And standing there, you feel part of it woven into something continuous and vast. You close your eyes. For a moment, the heat, the scent, the distant sound of the river all merge. You could stay here forever. Then someone taps your shoulder. You turn. It's the same servant from earlier, holding a small jar of water. She gestures for you to follow. You walk together through a narrow alley to a quiet garden enclosed by mud brick walls. Shade trees arch overhead, their leaves trembling in the breeze. At the center stands a low pool, reflecting the sky. She kneels beside it, dips a cup, and offers it to you. The water is cool and sweet, tasting faintly of stone and sunlight. "Drink," she says softly. Morning is finished. Day begins. You nod, drinking slowly. The last of the dream of night, and sleep fades from your body. The scarab at your waist feels warm again. She rises, brushing dust from her skirt. Ra climbs. We work. You watch her walk away, blending into the light until she's gone. You look into the pool again. Your reflection ripples, reshaped by wind and water. You barely recognize it. Maybe you're not meant to. In this place, everything water, scent, sound reminds you that identity, like time, is a cycle. You are always becoming someone new. The hammers start again in the distance. Life resumes its steady hum. You close your eyes, take one deep breath, and whisper a quiet thank you to the sun, to the servants, to the forgotten gods who still guard the space between sleeping and waking. You feel the warmth of the morning settle deep into your bones. For the first time, you understand what it means to greet the day as the Egyptians did not as something to conquer, but something to belong to. The light shifts, the world gleams. Somewhere far off, a temple gong sounds a soft metallic chime, marking the hour. You smile, press the scarab once more, and step fully into the day. By mid-morning, the sun is climbing high and the air is thick now, the kind of heat that presses gently against your skin and asks for obedience. You find yourself walking along the edge of the Nile, feeling the river's cool presence in contrast to the dry, golden air. The water smells faintly muddy with the faintest sweetness, and as you watch, you notice small ripples spreading across the surface, tiny waves, catching sunlight and scattering it like glitter. Egyptians understood this balance instinctively. The river brought life, cooled the air, and offered a gentle rhythm for daily labor and rest. You pause, tracing the shoreline with your eyes. Farmers are already at work, dragging wooden plows behind oxen. Their sandals kick up fine sand and dust, which floats lazily in shafts of sunlight. You remember the nights, the cool jugs, the damp mats, the flickering lamps, and realize that mornings like this are the reward of careful nights. Without the strategies for rest, the heat would be unbearable. Sleep and wakefulness are intimately connected here. The comfort of one allows the other to be sustainable. A woman passes by, carrying a basket of freshly baked bread on her head. The aroma mingles with the scent of the river, and you feel the familiar tug of hunger. She nods politely as she moves, and you realize that respect and courtesy are as much a part of daily survival as food and water. You follow her glance to a small clay oven tucked into the corner of a courtyard. Smoke curls upward in slow spirals, carrying warmth that is surprisingly gentle in the morning light. You inhale. Fresh bread, yeast rising. A hint of honey, perhaps this is another layer of comfort the Egyptians understood. The home smells of warmth and life, even in the desert. You wander further along the riverbank, noticing children splashing near the water. They squeal and laugh, their bare feet skimming the surface. Their play feels timeless. You imagine their parents' night rituals, the same you've seen the headrests, the oil lamps, the scented herbs, and realize that the comfort of the night allows joy in the day. The entire rhythm of life depends on these invisible threads of care and planning. You step closer to a small boat tethered to the shore. Its hull is dark wood, smooth with use, polished by water and sun. A man sits in the bow, carving a figure from a piece of palm wood. Base, Horus. You can't tell, but the precision in his hands is hypnotic. Every movement is deliberate, every cut thoughtful. You lean closer, admiring the skill. Egyptians believed that even the smallest carvings could carry power. You almost reach out, but the man's eyes meet yours. He smiles faintly and nods. It is permission, and you step back respectfully. Nearby, a group of women gather reeds to weave mats. The sound of snapping stalks and the rustle of leaves is soft, meditative. You sit on the riverbank and watch, listening to the rhythm. It reminds you of the repetition of night rituals, dipping wicks, scattering herbs, fanning beds. Life itself seems a pattern of repeated motions, each small act designed for comfort and continuity. You notice that some mats are already hung in doorways, dampened to cool the homes inside. Everything you've learned at night comes alive here in the day. A sudden breeze stirs, carrying the faint odor of mud, reeds, and the sweet scent of lotus flowers floating along the water. You inhale deeply. Historians still argue whether Egyptians grew lotus purely for spiritual reasons or primarily for its mild calming effect. You suspect both are true. It's a world where utility and spirituality are intertwined so completely that separating them feels almost impossible. As you wander along the river, you notice a small group of men hauling a basket of bricks toward a building under construction. Each step is deliberate, each movement part of a larger rhythm. One of the men pauses, wiping sweat from his brow. You imagine the night before, The same heat pressing down, the same need to sleep and cool down. Without the nighttime strategies, the jugs of water, the wet mats, the headrests, they would not have the energy to perform such labor. You continue walking, passing through a shaded alleyway where a baker mixes dough in a large clay bowl. The texture of the flour, dampened by water, makes your hands itch to touch it. You resist. The baker notices you and smiles. He dips a hand into the dough, tossing it lightly, and explains in gestures how the bread will rise by nightfall. You nod, pretending to understand, and smile back. You think of your own nights, of dripping water, cooled floors, flickering lamps, and scented oils. They've created a world in which survival, labor, and comfort are intertwined in ways that feel almost magical. Further down the alley, you encounter a scribe perched on a stool, writing on a piece of papyrus. His ink smells faintly of soot and vinegar. Each stroke of the reed pen is precise, deliberate. You remember seeing scribes working by lamplight at night, their eyes straining in the flickering glow. Perhaps this is why they appreciated careful sleep so much. The precision required in daytime work demanded physical and mental restoration during night hours. You sit nearby, watching the sun climb higher. The day is already hot, the river providing only faint relief. You feel the wisdom of all the nighttime strategies settling in your mind: the jars of water, the damp mats, the headrests, the scented oils, the lamps. Without them, surviving days like this would be impossible. Comfort, the Egyptians understood, wasn't luxury, it was a prerequisite for life itself. You notice a cat slinking along the wall, its movements sleek and deliberate. Egyptians revered cats not only for their ability to catch vermin, but also as protective spirits. A small bronze figure of a cat stands on a ledge nearby, ears pricked. You remember the small charms by the headrest, the tiny base amulet symbols of vigilance and protection. Even during the day, these symbols act as reminders of the balance between safety and vulnerability. In the corner of the alley, a young girl is weaving a small basket. She hums quietly, the sound rhythmic and soft, matching the river's movement. The Egyptians believed sound carried power, and perhaps her song is meant to soothe the baskets, the house, or even the gods themselves. You think of the chants you heard last night and the careful placement of lamps. Every sensory detail, sight, smell, sound has a purpose. The air is thick now, the sun relentless. You seek shade beside a mud brick wall, where the coolness of stone meets your skin. You close your eyes and recall the sensation of the night, the headrest, the cool floor, the scented oils, the lamps flickering in rhythm. The memory is almost tactile, a bridge from night to day, reminding you that comfort in the desert was always a carefully choreographed sequence. Historians still debate whether these daily patterns were consistent across all classes of Egyptian society. Did the farmers have the same level of care in their sleep as the priests? Did the artisans enjoy scented oils, lamps, and headrests? Perhaps not. Yet the principles remain the same: air circulation, cool surfaces, gentle lighting, rhythmic rituals. Even the simplest households would have found ways to survive, to rest, to reclaim energy from the relentless desert. You watch a small child being led toward the river by a mother, the child's feet kicking up dust as he stumbles along. You imagine the family's night before, the child tucked into linen, a headrest under his neck, the scent of herbs in the air, a lamp flickering nearby. You realize that comfort is not a single act, it's a chain of moments, small gestures, repeated, inherited. It's the reason anyone can survive, let alone thrive, in this harsh environment. The river glints as a small boat passes, carrying woven mats and jars of water. The sound of paddles cutting through the water is hypnotic. You close your eyes for a moment, letting it carry you back to the night rituals, the cool jugs, the faint lamp glow. You realize the continuum. Night and day, water and sun, labor and rest, they are inseparable. You rise and begin to walk again, following the rhythm of life. Merchants are shouting, children are playing, cats prowl along the edges. You pause at a small shrine where an offering has been left: bread, water, a tiny lotus flower. You kneel and bow slightly, feeling the continuity of care, the rhythm of devotion. The sun climbs higher, and you feel it press against your skin, warming, unforgiving. You smile, thinking of the nights behind you, the careful orchestration of sleep, the jugs of water, the lamps, the scented oils. Without them, mornings like this would be unbearable. The Egyptians did not just endure heat, they planned for it, designing every moment of night and morning to sustain life. And now, standing beside the Nile, feeling the pulse of the city, the river, the sun, you understand? Survival, comfort, joy, they are intertwined, inseparable, and sacred. You breathe deeply, the air heavy with life, and step forward, part of the ancient rhythm once again. The sun has reached its peak now, and the heat wraps around you like a thick, dry blanket. You pause in the shade of a tall mud brick wall, feeling the warmth radiate off the stone, the faint hum of life in the streets carrying up to meet you. Nights were carefully orchestrated to prepare the body and spirit for days like this, relentless, bright, alive. You follow a narrow alley toward a bustling market. The scent of fresh bread mingles with the sharper odors of fish, herbs, and sun-baked clay. Merchants call out to each other, negotiating loudly but not aggressively, as though the act of haggling itself is a rhythm, part of the music of daily life. You watch a woman exchange a small bundle of onions for a clay cup of water. The transaction is swift, efficient, practiced. There's an art to survival here, and it depends as much on skill as on the careful preservation of energy the night provided. You pass a stall where a man is selling palm wine. The sweet smell curls through the air, teasing your senses. A group of workers gathers nearby, cups in hand, laughter rolling over the clatter of baskets and carts. You think back to last night, the flickering lamp, the scent of herbs, the smooth curve of the headrest. Every tool, every ritual, every scent has been a preparation for this very moment, a day lived fully in a world both harsh and beautiful. Historians still argue whether the wealthiest Egyptians truly slept better than commoners, or whether ingenuity bridged the gap. You glance at a boy carrying a jug of water, his small frame barely making it under the sun's weight. He stops to sip, and you realize, even in the humblest homes, the principles are the same. Cool surfaces, airflow, shade, water, rhythm, they are the invisible architecture of comfort. You wander to a small temple tucked into the corner of a busy street. Its sandstone walls glow gold in the high sun. Priests move silently inside, arranging offerings, lighting incense. You inhale, catching the warm, resinous scent. The temple feels both protective and alive, an oasis of ritual amidst the relentless energy of the city. The Egyptians believed that sacred spaces extended the protection of night into day, creating continuity and stability. Outside the temple, a group of women sit weaving baskets from reeds. Their hands move in hypnotic patterns, the sound of snapping stalks and shifting fibers rhythmic and meditative. You realize that many daytime activities mimic the same principles as nighttime rituals: repetition, care, balance, and intentionality. Life in Egypt was never was orchestrated with attention to every moment. You find a shaded corner beside a low wall and sit, watching the city move. A man carries a basket of figs, offering one to a child nearby. The child squeals with delight and pops it into his mouth. The exchange is ordinary, yet profound. It's a reminder that the smallest gestures, sharing food, caring for others, observing rhythm and ritual, are part of the broader architecture of survival and comfort. You close your eyes briefly, letting the sounds, scents, and warmth wash over you. Somewhere nearby, a flute plays a soft, lilting melody. It blends with the river's gentle movement, the clatter of carts, the hum of voices. For a moment, you feel suspended in time, part of a continuum stretching back centuries. This is the culmination of what the Egyptians built: a life harmonized with environment, ritual, and rhythm. The day continues to unfold. Laborers drag baskets of mud for construction. Children splash in the Nile. Merchants shout and negotiate. Cats slink along walls, alert and watchful. You walk among them, the sun pressing warmth into your shoulders. And think of the nights spent in careful preparation, the headrests, the oil lamps, the scented herbs, the cool water. Every night was a rehearsal for a day like this. Every tool of comfort was a bridge between survival and flourishing. Polishing a bronze amulet. The sun catches it, scattering tiny points of light across the wall. You remember the small base figures by the headrests, the scarabs, the protective charms. Even now, these symbols of vigilance remind you that safety and comfort are interwoven. In Egypt, life and protection were never separate. The ordinary objects of daily life carried sacred weight. A gentle breeze stirs through the street, bringing relief. You breathe it in, savoring the contrast between sun and shadow, heat and air. Somewhere in the distance, someone begins to chant a low, rhythmic repetition that echoes the rituals of night. You realize how seamless the cycle is. Night leads to day, rest leads to labor. Preparation leads to survival. Ritual leads to meaning. You stop beside a small water jar, tilting it to drink. The cool liquid spills over your lips, refreshing, grounding. You glance around, mud brick walls, the river shimmering, merchants and children moving with quiet purpose. This is Egypt, alive and unrelenting, yet harmonious. Every breath you take, every step feels part of the continuum. A thought drifts through your mind, centuries from now. Someone will trace these steps through artifacts, texts, fragments of pottery. They will reconstruct the nights, the oils, the headrests, the rhythms, and you realize you are living exactly what they will describe. You are the bridge between then and now, inhabiting both worlds. The heat grows stronger. You find a shaded niche and lean against the wall. You close your eyes, remembering the nights spent under lamps beside cool water, inhaling the scent of lotus and herbs cradled by the crescent of a headrest. All that preparation, all that care, has brought you here to this full, luminous day. A merchant calls your name, offering figs and bread. You smile, accepting. The taste is simple, nourishing, yet it carries the weight of ritual and daily wisdom. You eat slowly, letting each bite remind you of the delicate architecture of survival built across centuries. Historians still debate whether ordinary Egyptians practiced the full array of nighttime rituals or adapted them as best they could. You feel confident now that adaptation was the point, the careful orchestration of comfort in whatever form possible. A jug of water, a mat on the cool floor, the faint scent of herbs. The low hum of the lamp. These are universal strategies scaled to circumstance. You rise and continue your walk, the scarab at your belt catching sunlight. The world moves in cycles, and you understand Egyptian comfort is never accidental. It is cumulative, deliberate, a weaving of air, water, scent, light, ritual, and care. Night prepares for day. Day reinforces night. Life and sleep are inseparable. As the afternoon approaches, the heat intensifies. You seek shade under a wide fig tree. Its leaves cast a dancing pattern across the dusty ground. You sit, feeling the sun's warmth filtered through green, the gentle rustle of leaves above, the distant pulse of life around you. For a long moment, you simply breathe. You close your eyes and replay the nights you've lived. Stone headrests, scented oils, flickering lamps, cool water, the whispers of gods, the protective charms. And now, standing in the full light, you feel the rhythm extend naturally into the day, the careful orchestration of comfort. The balance between rest and work, the sacred attention to air, water, and body. The city hums around you, timeless and unhurried. You realize that the Egyptians did not invent comfort as indulgence. They engineered it as survival, beauty, and ritual, blending practicality and spirituality so seamlessly that one could not exist without the other. Every night, every dawn, every breath has been part of a pattern stretching back centuries, sustaining life in a world of desert heat and endless sun. You rise slowly, brushing dust from your tunic. The river shimmers nearby, carrying sunlight and reflections. Birds rise in synchronized flight. The hum of the city pulses gently through your body. You carry the scarab in your palm, small and warm, a reminder of continuity, protection, and the careful orchestration of life. You step forward, part of the river of people and time, sunlight and shadow, ritual and rhythm. The knowledge of nights, of headrests, lamps, oils, and water courses through you like the Nile itself. Life in Egypt is neither random nor harsh. It is deliberate, balanced, and alive. And as you move through the streets, carrying the lessons of centuries, you understand fully: to sleep well, to wake well, to live well in the desert is to honor rhythm, preparation, and care in all its forms. You are both witness and participant, bound to the cycles of time, the subtle wisdom of nights long past, and the enduring pulse of life along the Nile.